I'm Caitlin Hensley, and I chose to do my film oral project over the time frame 1915 to 1920. Some of the technological changes from 1915 to 1920. The first natural color photo was printed in National Geographic. Technicolor was incorporated in 1915, but it wasn't until after World War II that full color films began to be accepted by audiences as more than just a passing fad. The invention of phototelegraphic transmission that would send the first digital images over cable and some important advances in motion picture formats were invented from that time. Producer and director Thomas H. Ince introduced a factory system that was a method that would be used to mass produce films. Different films in various stages of production would be systematically rotated through his movie studio. Nikon, a very popular camera brand, was founded in 1917. During the early life of cinema, silent films were the only option. This period saw basic film language, established the principle of continuity, editing, lighting, and the rise of feature-length films. American cinema rose in the 1920s with the invention of the studio system. These studios turned filmmaking into an industrial process. More technological changes from 1915 to 1920 were the Bell and Howell 2709 movie camera. This allowed directors to film close-ups without physically moving the camera. The Fox Film Corporation Foundation was founded in February 1915 by New York Nickelodeon owner William Fox. The Supreme Court ruled that states may censor films. This encourages scrutiny of movies during future decades. The Technicolor Motion Picture Corporation was founded in Boston, Massachusetts. The company pioneered the development of color film processes known as Technicolor. The first demonstration of a 3D film was in 1915 at the Astor Theater in New York City. Red and green glasses were required to view test reels of 3D footage. Film technological changes. In 1917, the first African American owned studio, the pioneering the Lincoln Motion Picture Company, was founded. Max Fleischner invented the rotoscope to streamline the frame-by-frame copying process. It was a device used to overlay drawings on live-action film. In 1919, Walt Disney teamed with UB Iwerks to form Iwerks Disney Commercial Artists, and that was to create cartoon animations. For my film to emphasize on during this project, I chose Intolerance. Intolerance was a 1916 silent film. It was directed by D.W. Griffith. Griffith's longest, greatest, and most narratively complex film was Intolerance. It costed about $1.9 million to produce. It became the first multi-million dollar box office bomb in film history. It was 3.5 hours. It was an epic that intercut 4 parallel storylines. Griffith mostly financed the film himself, which contributed to his financial ruin for the rest of his life. After the widespread controversy surrounding his racist masterpiece, The Birth of a Nation, Intolerance was Griffith's response to defensively answer his critics with this work. One of the unusual characteristics of the film is that many of the characters do not have names. He usually just called the characters like by girl or the boy or mother. They did not have names. Intolerance continued. It was the story of a poor young woman separated by prejudice from her husband and baby. It is interwoven with tales of intolerance from throughout history. Intolerance consists of 4 separate stories into one movie, but what's unusual about it is that the stories are not told episodically, but they're presented simultaneously in parallel action. This means that they didn't go by order, that it's done episodically. The stories consist of the modern story, the Judean story, which is also known as the biblical story, the French story, and finally, the Babylonian story. Those were the 4 separate entities that it talked about. Tying the stories together shows Griffith's brilliant control of editing, and the audience found the film confusing and unpleasant.